I'm Elena Whitmore. Today, I laid to rest the only person who ever genuinely cared for me, my grandmother, Catherine Whitmore. We gathered at a secluded cemetery in the misty mountains of Oregon, the type of location where the quietness feels suffocating. But as I prepared to walk away from her grave, the family's long-serving estate attorney, Marcus Sterling, seized my elbow. His grasp was firm, urgent. He leaned close, smelling of aged leather and mint tea, and murmured, "Elena, your grandmother anticipated this moment. She didn't die from heart failure. If you want to survive, meet me at the historic courthouse on 7th Avenue in 90 minutes. Do not inform your mother. Do not inform your aunt. Their mourning is theatrical." He disappeared into the mist before I could respond. My pulse wasn't just racing, it was hammering against my ribcage. I glanced toward my mother, Patricia, who was pressing a designer tissue to her eyes, and my Aunt Veronica, who was already glancing at her expensive wristwatch. For the first time in my existence, I didn't see my family. I saw hunters. Before we explore the horrifying revelation I uncovered that evening, tell me in the comments, from which corner of the globe are you watching this story unfold? And if you've ever sensed that your own family was concealing something sinister, stay with me, because what I discovered behind that locked door transformed everything, forever. I waited. I remained in my vehicle until the final black sedan departed from the cemetery grounds. My thoughts were chaotic. My grandmother was 79, certainly elderly, but she was mentally acute. She completed Sudoku puzzles without hesitation. She practiced yoga every dawn. A sudden heart attack simply didn't make sense. I drove to the 7th Avenue courthouse. It's an ancient stone structure, partially concealed by wild jasmine vines. The side entrance was wedged open with a wooden block. Inside, Marcus Sterling was positioned in the shadows near the legal archives section. He didn't offer condolences. He simply extended a substantial brown envelope toward me. "Elena," his voice unsteady, "Catherine came to see me 5 weeks ago. She was frightened. She began experiencing a bitter aftertaste in her morning coffee. She suspected she was developing cognitive issues because she kept misplacing her reading glasses. But then she discovered her backup pair hidden in your mother's desk drawer." He revealed a folder. Inside was a laboratory analysis, not from a medical facility, but from an independent forensic testing company. "She sent me a sample of her cardiac medication," Marcus continued. "It wasn't heart medication, Alina. It was a concentrated thallium compound. Gradual, systematic. It replicates the symptoms of cardiac arrest over weeks." I felt nauseated. My own mother, the woman who had raised me, who had celebrated my achievements, was administering poison to her own mother. "Why?" I managed to articulate. "Because of the Whitmore Legacy Trust," Marcus explained. "Catherine was preparing to exclude Patricia and Veronica completely. She intended to transfer the entire estate, the property, the investments, the $52 million portfolio, directly to you. But there's a complication. She established a fail-safe mechanism, a secured digital repository that only activates with your biometric authentication. If she died under seemingly natural circumstances, Patricia would have opportunity to manipulate you into surrendering legal authority. If you sign those authorization documents, you're the next target on their list." I drove back to the Whitmore estate in a daze. The residence is an expansive manor, but that evening it resembled a mausoleum. As I entered through the main entrance, the fragrance of imported orchids overwhelmed me. My mother, Patricia, was positioned in the drawing room with a crystal glass of brandy. She looked up, her expression meticulously composed. "Elena, darling, where have you been wandering? We have critical matters to address." Beside her sat Dr. Adrian Cole. He was our family's personal physician and my mother's longtime confidant. He was the one who certified the death documentation. He was the one who informed me grandmother passed peacefully during sleep. Now, observing him seated there, his polished appearance and practiced smile appeared predatory. "Elena,
Dr. Cole said, his tone smooth as expensive wine. "I was just informing your mother that, given all the emotional strain from the funeral arrangements, you should consider taking something to help you relax. You appear exhausted." He reached into his leather medical case and extracted a small amber prescription bottle. My stomach churned with revulsion. "I'm perfectly fine, Adrian," I said, maintaining a neutral tone. "I just need some fresh air and solitude." "Actually, sweetheart," my mother interjected, rising from her chair. She held a thick stack of legal documentation. "Your grandmother's estate is extraordinarily complex. To prevent the government from confiscating enormous portions through taxation, we require you to authorize these estate management transfer documents. It's purely procedural. It grants Veronica and myself the legal authority to manage the complicated financial elements so you can concentrate on your graduate studies."
I examined the papers carefully. I recognized the terminology from what Marcus had cautioned me about. It wasn't management authorization, it was complete relinquishment of my inheritance rights. If I signed this documentation, Patricia could have me institutionalized in a psychiatric facility, seize control of the assets, and I would simply vanish from society. "I'll review them tomorrow morning, Mother," I said, attempting to move toward the staircase. But Aunt Veronica emerged from the corridor, obstructing my path. She's an imposing woman, a failed investment banker who had spent her entire existence anticipating her mother's death to claim her share. "Tomorrow morning is unacceptable, Elena," Veronica declared, her voice dropping to a threatening register. "The financial institutions required these signatures by 8 a.m. Just sign the papers. We're family. Don't you have faith in us?" The way she emphasized faith sent ice through my veins. I looked from my mother's calculating eyes to the doctor's clinical expression to my aunt's intimidating presence. I was confined in a residence with 3 murderers who were now focused entirely on me. I left my grandmother's antique fountain pen in her private study cottage. It was her final gift to me before she became ill. I cannot sign something this significant without it. It has tremendous sentimental value. Give me 15 minutes. I didn't wait for their response. I rushed out the rear entrance toward the small brick cottage at the property's edge, where grandmother had spent her final weeks. As I crossed the darkened lawn, a dim light flickered from behind the neighboring property's hedge. It was Mrs. Hamilton. She was 78 years old and had resided next door for 4 decades. "Elena, quickly, over here," she whispered urgently. I ran to the property fence. Mrs. Hamilton appeared genuinely terrified. "You haven't consumed anything in that house tonight, have you?" she asked anxiously. "No. Why are you asking?" "I witnessed them," she whispered, glancing nervously toward my family's house. 3 weeks ago, I was outside late searching for my missing dog. I witnessed your mother and that physician near the old stone incinerator. They were burning bags of clothing and Catherine's personal tea collection. And Elena, I observed your mother's face clearly in the firelight. She wasn't grieving. She was smiling with satisfaction." Mrs. Hamilton handed me a small leather-bound journal through the fence opening. "Catherine threw this over the hedge the evening before she died," she explained. "She instructed me that if I saw the funeral procession arrive at the house, I had to deliver this to you, and absolutely no one else. She made me swear on my late husband's memory." I seized the journal and sprinted into the cottage, securing the door behind me. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely open the pages. It wasn't a personal diary, it was a meticulous evidence documentation log. Grandmother had been conducting a dangerous investigation. She understood she was being poisoned, but she couldn't trust the local law enforcement because Aunt Veronica was romantically involved with the county sheriff. Inside the journal, she had concealed a small USB flash drive. The final entry read, "They believe I'm deteriorating mentally. They believe the cognitive confusion is advancing. Today, I concealed the recording equipment inside the base of the drawing room antique lamp.
If you're reading this, Elena, the complete truth is on that drive. They murdered me for wealth they never earned. Don't allow them to possess it. Use the incinerator. The property contained an old stone incinerator structure that had been sealed in the 1930s. I realized grandmother wasn't referencing burning, she was indicating a hiding location. I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel pathway outside the cottage. "Alina, darling, it's been 15 minutes already." My mother's voice called out with artificial sweetness, but there was a threatening undertone now, like danger concealed beneath politeness. I tucked the journal and the flash drive into my jacket pocket. I climbed through the rear window of the cottage and remained low to the ground, crawling through the damp grass toward the old incinerator structure. I pulled at the heavy iron cover. It resisted, but finally shifted. Inside, positioned on a narrow shelf approximately 4 feet down, was a waterproof metal container. I grabbed it and ran toward the main house, not to enter, but to reach my vehicle. "Where is she?" I heard Veronica shout from the front porch. I reached my car, struggled with the keys, and threw myself inside just as Veronica appeared around the corner. She slammed both hands against my driver's window, her face contorted with fury. "Exit the vehicle immediately, Elena." I shifted into reverse, pressed the accelerator completely, and didn't decelerate until I arrived at the law enforcement facility, not the one in our jurisdiction, but the state investigative headquarters 3 towns away. I sat in a sterile interrogation room with 2 state criminal investigators. We connected the USB flash drive to a laptop computer. The audio recording was initially unclear, just ambient sounds of a fireplace, then distinct voices. "How much longer until it's finished, Adrian?" That was unmistakably my mother's voice. 10 days, perhaps 12. The thallium is accumulating precisely as planned. The cardiac symptoms will appear completely natural. No medical examiner will question a 79-year-old experiencing heart failure. "And what about the girl?" That was Aunt Veronica speaking. "Elena is becoming increasingly observant. She's constantly visiting the cottage and asking uncomfortable questions." "Once Catherine is gone," my mother said, her tone frigid and emotionless, "we'll begin administering the psychiatric medications to Elena. Several months of her displaying erratic behavior, some academic failures at her university. We'll have her legally declared mentally incompetent. We'll control the entire trust, and she'll spend the remainder of her existence in a secure, private medical facility where she cannot create complications for us." The investigators sat in complete silence. I felt as though I was observing the scene from outside my own body. Hearing your own mother strategize your elimination is an experience that permanently scars your consciousness. But there was additional evidence in the metal container. Inside were my grandmother's authentic will documents, a set of keys to a security deposit box I had never known existed, and the most damning discovery, life insurance policies my mother had secretly obtained on my life only 6 weeks earlier. They weren't simply planning to institutionalize me, they were waiting for the opportune moment to end my life as well.
The law enforcement officials wanted to execute immediate arrests, but I convinced them we needed more definitive evidence. We needed them to confess their crimes explicitly. I agreed to return to the house wearing a concealed recording device hidden beneath my mourning dress. When I walked back into the Whitmore estate, the atmosphere was electrically tense. Patricia, Veronica, and Dr. Cole were positioned in the entrance foyer like predators waiting for prey. "I located the fountain pen," I said, my voice trembling authentically. "I'm prepared to sign the documents now." We proceeded into the drawing room. I sat at the antique mahogany desk. My mother positioned the legal papers directly in front of me. "Before I sign these," I said, looking directly at her, "I have just one question. Did grandmother suffer during her final hours?" The room became deathly silent. My mother leaned down, her face mere inches from mine. The mask she had worn for years finally disintegrated. Her eyes resembled cold steel. "She was elderly, Elena. she said with chilling calmness. She was clinging to a fortune she was too senile to manage properly. We did her a favor by ending her confusion, and if you're as intelligent as she believed you were, you'll sign those documents immediately, and we can all proceed with our lives. Don't make this situation difficult. I would absolutely hate for you to experience a complete mental breakdown so soon after your grandmother's funeral. That would be truly tragic. So you did murder her? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Veronica stepped forward aggressively, her hand gripping my shoulder painfully. What difference does it make now? She's buried. Sign the papers before I lose what little patience I have remaining. I cannot sign, I said, standing up and backing away from the desk. Because I know about the thallium poisoning, Mother. I know about the incinerator hiding place, and I know about the life insurance policies you took out on me without my knowledge or consent. Patricia's expression transformed into something monstrous. You ungrateful little fool, you should have simply taken the sedatives when we offered them. She nodded toward Veronica. My aunt lunged toward me, but the front entrance door didn't simply open, it exploded inward with tremendous force. State police, nobody move, hands where we can see them. The drawing room was suddenly flooded with armed tactical officers and blinding flashlights. Veronica attempted to flee through the kitchen exit, but she was physically tackled into the expensive china display cabinet, shattering thousands of dollars worth of porcelain. Dr. Cole dropped his medical bag and immediately raised his hands in surrender, desperately pleading for a reduced sentence before the handcuffs were even secured on his wrists. My mother? She didn't scream and protest. She didn't physically resist. She simply stared at me with an expression of pure, undiluted hatred as the officers led her away in steel restraints. 6 months have passed since that horrifying night. The Whitmore estate has been completely transformed. I didn't liquidate the property. Instead, I utilized the legacy trust funds to fulfill my grandmother's secret philanthropic dream. She always despised how the wealthy aristocracy in our community looked down upon the struggling working families in the surrounding areas. So the manor is no longer a private family residence. It's now the Catherine Whitmore Foundation for Justice and Accountability. We provide free legal representation and forensic financial investigation for people being defrauded out of their rightful inheritances by predatory family members and corrupt relatives. Aunt Veronica and Dr. Cole are both serving life imprisonment sentences for first-degree premeditated murder. My mother, because she was identified as the primary architect of the conspiracy, is confined in a maximum security correctional facility. She sends me correspondence occasionally, letters filled with manipulative language and false remorse. I never open them. I burn them in the same drawing room fireplace where she once strategized my death. I visited grandmother's grave yesterday. I didn't bring orchids or expensive floral arrangements. I brought a single white lily and her old Sudoku puzzle book, completed entirely. I realized that greed doesn't simply destroy a family, it exposes what was never authentically there to begin with.
But for every person who attempts to extinguish your light to steal your inheritance, there's a method to fight back effectively. You just have to possess the courage to look behind the locked doors and confront the truth, no matter how devastating. I'm Elena Whitmore, and I'm finally living freely. The investigation that followed my grandmother's murder revealed even more disturbing details that I hadn't initially discovered. The state forensic team conducted a comprehensive analysis of the Whitmore estate, and what they uncovered painted an even darker picture of my family's conspiracy. They found that my mother had been systematically poisoning my grandmother for nearly 4 months, much longer than we initially believed. The thallium wasn't the only substance. Dr. Cole had been gradually increasing doses of various compounds, each designed to create symptoms that would appear natural for someone of my grandmother's age. Confusion, fatigue, memory loss, tremors, all carefully orchestrated to make her eventual death seem inevitable and unsuspicious. What haunted me most was discovering that my grandmother had known about the poisoning for at least 6 weeks before her death. She had been documenting everything, collecting evidence, but she couldn't act immediately because she needed irrefutable proof. She had been playing a dangerous game, pretending to deteriorate while secretly recording conversations and preserving evidence. Marcus Sterling, the estate attorney, revealed to me during one of our many meetings that my grandmother had visited him multiple times in those final weeks. She had been terrified, but also determined. She told me that if something happened to her, you were the only person she trusted, Marcus said, his eyes filled with genuine sadness. She said you had her strength, her integrity. She knew you would fight back. The financial audit of the estate revealed even more shocking information. My mother and aunt had been embezzling for my grandmother for years, small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums. They had created false invoices, fictional expenses, and elaborate schemes to siphon money from the family accounts. The total they had stolen exceeded $3 million over a 7-year period. But what truly devastated me was discovering the depths of their planning regarding my own fate. In Dr. Cole's confiscated files, investigators found detailed psychiatric evaluation forms, all fabricated, that documented supposed mental health issues I had never experienced. There were forged medical records indicating I had been treated for depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. None of it was true, but it had been meticulously prepared to create a paper trail that would justify my institutionalization. They had already identified the facility where they planned to commit me, a private psychiatric hospital in a remote area known for accepting wealthy families, problematic members, and keeping them heavily sedated and isolated. The monthly cost was astronomical, which meant they would have complete justification for accessing the trust funds to pay for my care. The life insurance policies were even more sinister. My mother had taken out 3 separate life insurance policies on my life, totaling $8 million, all within the past 2 months. The insurance company's investigation revealed that she had lied on the applications, claiming I had requested the coverage for estate planning purposes. In reality, I had never been informed these policies existed. During the trial, which lasted 3 grueling months, even more horrifying details emerged. Veronica testified against my mother in exchange for a reduced sentence, and her testimony revealed the true extent of their depravity. She described conversations where they had discussed various methods of ending my life once I was institutionalized, making it appear as though I had died by suicide or perhaps from complications related to my supposed mental illness. Dr. Cole, in his own testimony, attempting to minimize his role, admitted that he had been having an affair with my mother for over 5 years. Their relationship had been the foundation of the conspiracy. He had used his medical expertise to advise on the most effective poisons, the ones that would be hardest to detect in a standard autopsy. He had been the one to suggest thallium specifically because of its ability to mimic natural cardiac events. What emerged during the trial was a portrait of 3 people so consumed by greed and entitlement that they had convinced themselves murder was justified. My mother actually testified that she believed she deserved the inheritance more than I did because she had endured being my grandmother's daughter for decades. She showed no remorse, no recognition of the evil she had committed. The prosecuting attorney, a brilliant woman named Jennifer Hayes, presented such overwhelming evidence that the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement. The charges were extensive and damning. I attended every day of the trial. I sat in the courtroom directly in my mother's line of sight, and I watched as her fantasy world she had constructed for herself crumbled piece by piece. There were moments when she would look at me and I could see confusion in her eyes, as though she genuinely couldn't understand why I had betrayed the family by exposing their crimes.
That's when I truly understood the depth of her delusion. In her mind, I was the villain. I was the ungrateful daughter who had destroyed the family by refusing to go along with their plan. She had so thoroughly justified her actions to herself that she couldn't see the truth, that she was a murderer who had killed her own mother and planned to kill her own daughter for money. The sentencing hearing was equally difficult. I was given the opportunity to provide a victim impact statement, and I struggled with what to say. How do you articulate the betrayal of discovering your mother is a murderer? How do you express the grief of losing not just your grandmother, but your entire family in one devastating moment? I kept my statement brief. I stood before the judge and said, "My grandmother taught me that integrity matters more than wealth, that truth matters more than comfort, and that love should never have conditions attached to it. My mother taught me the opposite of all those things. I don't forgive her, but I do pity her because she destroyed everything real in pursuit of something as meaningless as money. She had a daughter who loved her, a mother who provided for her, and a life of comfort and security, and she threw it all away for greed." The judge sentenced my mother to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Veronica received 25 years to life. Dr. Cole received life in prison as well. As they were led away, my mother turned to look at me one final time. Her expression wasn't one of remorse or sadness, it was pure rage. Even in that moment, facing the rest of her life in prison, she was angry at me for not allowing her to get away with murder. In the months following the trial, I had to rebuild my entire sense of identity. I had lost my family, but I had also lost my understanding of my own history. Every memory I had was now tainted by the knowledge of what they truly were. Every holiday, every birthday, every moment of supposed family bonding, all of it was a lie. I spent months in therapy, working through the trauma and the betrayal. My therapist helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for their choices, that their evil didn't reflect on me. But it was a difficult journey, learning to trust again, learning to believe that not everyone was wearing a mask. The Whitmore estate, which had once felt like a prison, became my sanctuary. I moved into the manor, but I completely transformed it. I removed all the furniture and decorations that reminded me of my family and created something entirely new. The drawing room where my mother had planned my death became my office for the foundation. The cottage where my grandmother had hidden evidence became a memorial library in her honor. The Catherine Whitmore Foundation for Justice and Accountability has helped over 200 families in the past 6 months. We've exposed financial abuse, prevented fraudulent estate transfers, and helped victims of family exploitation find justice. Every person we help feels like honoring my grandmother's memory, like ensuring her death wasn't meaningless. I've also become an advocate for elder abuse prevention. I speak at conferences and work with legislators to strengthen laws protecting seniors from financial exploitation and abuse. I've shared my story publicly, not for attention or sympathy, but because I know there are other families out there where similar crimes are happening in secret. The response has been overwhelming. I receive messages weekly from people who recognize signs of abuse in their own families or who have survived similar situations. Each story reinforces what I learned from my own experience, that family violence and exploitation are far more common than anyone wants to acknowledge. Mrs. Hamilton, the neighbor who saved my life by preserving my grandmother's journal, has become like family to me. She visits the foundation regularly, helping with administrative work and sharing her own wisdom with the people we serve. She told me recently that my grandmother had confided in her weeks before her death, telling her that if anything happened, she trusted Mrs. Hamilton to protect me. "Your grandmother knew," Mrs. Hamilton said. "She knew they would come after you next, and she made sure you'd have what you needed to survive." I've also maintained a relationship with Marcus Sterling, the estate attorney. He's become a valuable advisor to the foundation and a trusted friend.
He's helped me navigate the complex legal landscape of inheritance law and elder protection. He once told me that in his 40 years of practice, he'd never seen a case as disturbing as mine, but also never seen someone respond with as much strength and purpose. As I sit here today, looking out over the grounds of the estate that almost became my tomb, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not gratitude for what happened, I would give anything to have my grandmother back, to have had a real family that loved without conditions, but gratitude for surviving, for finding purpose in tragedy, for being able to transform something evil into something good. My grandmother's grave has become a place of peace for me. I visit every week, bringing fresh flowers and sitting on the bench she had installed there years ago. I tell her about the foundation, about the people we've helped, about the lives that have been saved because she had the courage to gather evidence even while she was being murdered. I've learned that evil often wears familiar faces. It sits at your dinner table, tucks you in at night, smiles at family gatherings. And that's what makes it so dangerous. We don't want to believe that people we love are capable of such darkness. We make excuses, ignore warning signs, convince ourselves that we're imagining things. But I've also learned that truth has power, evidence has power, and courage, real courage, isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite being terrified. It's trusting yourself when everyone around you is telling you you're wrong. If my story does anything, I hope it encourages people to trust their instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. If someone's behavior doesn't match their words, pay attention. Document everything. Trust but verify. And never sign legal documents under pressure, especially when grief is being used as a weapon against you. I'm Elena Whitmore. I'm 26 years old. I'm the sole survivor of a family that tried to murder me for money. And I'm using every resource I inherited, every day I was given, to make sure no one else has to face what I faced alone. The foundation's motto, chosen from my grandmother's favorite quote, hangs in bronze letters above the entrance. The truth will set you free, but first, it will break your heart. My grandmother understood that truth is often painful, but it's always necessary. I'm finally free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free from people who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to wealth. And every day I work to help others find that same freedom.
If this story made you question who you can truly trust, hit that subscribe button right now. And if you believe elder abuse and family financial exploitation need more attention, smash that like button, because I share stories about people who survived family betrayal every single day. Drop a comment below. Have you ever suspected someone in your family of having dark intentions? What warning signs did you notice? I read every comment, and your experience might help someone else recognize danger. Remember, greed reveals character. When money is involved, people show you who they really are. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never let anyone pressure you into signing away your rights. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Let's expose family predators together. See you in the next one. Stay safe out there.